What's up, you guys? My name's Chris Wang. I have a quick enablement session for you on FuzzIt and FuzzIt, our most recent company acquisitions. So, quick line of events is we'll talk about what these companies are, what they do, and ultimately how you can use these as talking points for your customer conversations. Here's my contact information. The only reason why I leave it here is I'm trying to build out in a new enablement series. And if you have any ideas on things that you'd like to hear about or learn about, then please let me know. So what is fuzz testing? When talking about fuzz testing, the most important thing to know about it is that it's an extremely advanced form of security testing. And so what I basically mean by this is that a lot of people don't even know about it. And very rarely do people actually use this in any form of fashion on any sort of regular basis. So the reason why that's the case is because we don't have great tooling around it, and also because it's just so advanced. And so another thing to know about it is that a lot of smaller engineering companies in general, they don't have dedicated security teams. And so the reason why is because they might not be large enough, or it might not be important for them. They feel like they can skimp on it. And so what they do is they actually contract out security work and have people who validate the security of their products like every once in a while. So they might have people come in every 6 months. Whenever they do something like this ends up costing a lot of money, and because these firms, they charge maybe $300 to $400 an hour. And so what we're basically going to do with building out fuzz testing is that we are going to make this accessible to people in their development workflows almost for the first time. So once again, very rarely does anyone do this in any regular fashion. And what we're going to do with GitLab is that just by using GitLab itself, you have exposure and access to this. So there's two types of fuzz testing, static and dynamic. And the important thing to know about this is that GitLab is going to do both. So that's the reason why we acquired two different companies. And to basically talk about the differences between dynamic and static fuzz testing, I'm just going to give you an example. And I'll also explain what this is exactly. So here's the registration page for Amazon.com. And as you can see, it's expecting basically letters, right? So for name, it's expecting something like Simon. For email, it's expecting some letters, the @ symbol, and then some more letters, .net or .com. And what people have found, and what fuzz testing does, is it basically tries to break this part of your application by putting in random stuff. So what if I put in letters instead? What if I put in some combinations of letters and numbers? What if I put in like a lot of letters separated by like different spaces and things like that? The reason why fuzz testing is needed and is important is because a lot of applications actually break if you do things like this. And eventually what happens is that people just interpret your website differently, right? So someone might have, really multi-part first name. It's something that engineers didn't think of. And when they put their name in, then all of a sudden they find that Amazon.com breaks. And that's obviously a problem. So that's dynamic fuzz testing. And so once again, in dynamic fuzz testing, you have a live version of your application running. And basically, you're basically trying to break it by putting in different things that it's not expecting. Now contrast that with static fuzz testing. So static fuzz testing doesn't have a live running version of your application. It's looking at the code itself. And so as an example of static fuzz testing, here's a very brief code snippet. You don't really need to know what this is doing, but here's a list of movies. And what we're doing is we're selecting a random movie from the list, and then we're displaying what was selected. So this works great if we actually give it a list of movies. But what happens if we give it numbers? What happens if we don't give it anything? So as opposed to having a live version of your running application in dynamic fuzz testing, in static fuzz testing, you're basically looking at the code itself. But fundamentally, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to break it by giving things that it's not expecting. Once again, research shows that you can break around 20 to 30% of applications by inputting the wrong thing into their forms. So every time an application breaks, this means that managers look bad. It means that directors and VPs, their various counterparts are going to be happy because a lot of times these applications are generating the company revenue, right? From the engineers themselves, they don't like it because all of a sudden they're getting called in to fix something Saturday morning, maybe sometimes at 4 a.m. in the morning. And ultimately, it means that they have a poor user experience for the various people that use these applications. One more thing that I'd like to mention is that if you put in, sometimes for websites, you can actually inject code into the forms themselves and hijack the websites. And so I'll just give you an example of this. This isn't going to work on Amazon.com, but a really large and alarmingly large number of websites you can actually hack just by injecting in code. So if I typed in something like .json, validate, this is obviously fake code, but if I were to inject something in here, a very large chunk of websites you can actually hijack and then either gain access to a portion of it or gain access to information you're not supposed to have. And so fuzz testing, by validating all these forms, this is one of the things that they look for. So who are the people that we should target in talking about fuzz testing? So the manager and director level is really great because you can talk about how they can ultimately build better applications using GitLab. They obviously are going to be very attuned to, every time their code breaks or every time they have a poor user experience. And this is something that they really want to hear about. Priority number 2 is the architects. And so these are people that pick the tooling that companies use. And then priority number 3 is the various engineers that actually work on this part of the code itself. So the people that test the code, the security engineers, and the people who actually build out the forms. And the reason why is because they have a vested interest in making sure that things work. That basically means that they don't have to fix things to Saturday in the morning. So here are some specific examples that you can ask your customers. Number 1 is, have you ever had any of your applications break because of improper form validation? This is a question that's better for lower level, so engineering managers and the various engineers themselves. If you're talking with someone that's either a senior manager or higher, then you can talk more about value. So something like, are you happy with your application user experiences? Do you ever have problems with the various user interfaces of your applications? If you ask these questions, I'd say at least 50% of the people that you talk to are going to say yes. And then you can follow up with something like, if there was some sort of automated way to validate forms as part of your development process, would you like to hear about it? If you ask these questions just simply like this, I think that a lot of people are going to be interested in the new fuzz testing functionality that we're building out. So here's a roadmap of where we're at. So right now, we just had this acquisition. It's going to take us some time to implement this functionality into GitLab itself. And this is a tentative timeline, right? So it's not fixed. But our goal is to basically have it so that our customers can start using this in October of 2020. January 2021 is what we're targeting for, almost mature version of this. And then so the idea is that by the spring of next year, people should really be able to use this in a way that adds value to their organization.